and then. Okay, so let's welcome to the stage from KCRW Radio's Good Food, Evan Kleiman, as our moderator today. And the director, Christopher Quinn. And the producer and narrator of the film, Natalie Portman.
I'm so happy to be here for such an interesting movie. Before we start, I'm just curious, how many of you learned something that you had never known before watching the movie? That's what it's all about, right? Natalie, maybe you can start off by just telling us why this particular subject, why this movie. This isn't a vanity project for you. You really got involved, and you spent time. So making that choice would be important for you.
Well, it's been a big part of my life, sort of thinking about the treatment of animals. And then when I read the book, Jonathan Safran Foer's book, I was kind of introduced to the other aspects of factory farming. And then Christopher took it even farther in really bringing this human aspect of these farmers, that it's not just about the environmental degradation and the mistreatment of animals and the health impact of consumption, but it's also about the emotional and financial and the lives of these people, and it gives you something really, really tangible to connect to. So it's been an incredible process, and really thanks to Christopher's incredible vision and work.
And you wrote some of the voiceover narration that Natalie spoke, right?
Yes.
It was really beautiful, really beautiful. When I watched it with screener just by myself, I was really moved by those pieces, and I felt that it really took what we were seeing, which sometimes was brutal, and sort of moved it to a place that was both very mindful, a lot of stuff to think about, but also very emotional.
Well, yeah, and I mean, so, for those who read the book, I mean, there's a very personal message, it's quasi-memoir, Jonathan's story of his family and how they got to America, and all the family history that's wrapped up in his life. So one of the things that we agreed when we all got together in Jonathan's backyard in Brooklyn, when we started to figure out how we were going to make the film, was what element will be there that we didn't certainly want to go down and trace the steps of what Jonathan had been through. So in a way, I think the narration was kind of an answer to that, and it was also the pronoun usage, which is he, she, we, and we played with that a lot, and I worked that in to say that really, in the end, the responsibility is on us. It's not going to be our government. It's not going to be, the systems will change when we make the decisions for the systems to change. So that was and the narrative voice, and so we started to work on that and do a back and forth about how that's going to work, and then eventually it folded into kind of the non-traditional narrative voice where we could be we, or we could be I, or they.
So I have to ask you about the decision to open the movie with Frank Reese. I've known about him forever because I started the first slow food convivium here. So I think I must have been one of the first people who had an opportunity to buy one of those birds. And he's such an absolutely wonderful, strange individual. Talk to me about the decision to just start with such a singular story. I mean, he's not a regular farmer.
No, and one of the things that I loved about Jonathan's book is talk about bucking traditional systems. I mean, he wrote the book in a very non-traditional way, but I loved in the midsection of the book, there's an open letters, and he just gave Frank license to write whatever he wanted to write, and he did the same with Bruce Friedrich, who runs the Good Food Institute. And Frank's story just, I don't know what it was. When I read it, I was like, oh, I want to meet that guy. And I also knew that it was going to be a narrative story. We talked about that, like letting the narrative voices speak on behalf of the film, or the idea that it was trying to, what we were trying to get across. And Frank was talking about, like, at night I can hear what they're talking about, and he knows their language. And so he's like, I can tell when there's a coyote around, or I can tell when there's a fight about brooding. And to me, that just was like, wow, there's a guy that really knows what he's doing, and that kind of traditional, what we like to think anyway in the mythos of America, this idea of a farmer who really knows his animals, and he happens to be
those books, when he
exceptional.
pulls out those books and starts going through them, I mean, such a connection to a past that is so gone, but still lives in this man.
And you know, and you think about it, it's only like 50 years gone from us, so over 40 really. I mean, there's really this opportunity to bring that back, and there is like a pride factor. One of my favorite moments when when you do these interviews, and all of a sudden there's this moment where something's said, but when Frank says, and it's in the film, it's about doing things with great love. That's what he's striving to do. He's not trying to be a businessman or anything else. He's trying to do something and craft something with great love, and that kind of matters. I think we all like to think that that's what America is about in a lot of ways, and I think it's also what maybe in the tenor of our times we're lacking a little bit of that. So this is like, for me, it was kind of an amazing, what is America? That kind of question I asked, and as I went out and met the farmers and the whistleblowers, and kind of restored my faith in the idea that we can kind of create a new system or go back to the original system and figure out a way forward. And so I felt very optimistic in the process.
What I really admired most about the movie when I came to the end of it was the fact that there wasn't really an attempt to shame meat eaters, that it was really all about giving information. And then, because I know as a person who's known about this stuff for a long time, that once you know it, you can't unknow it. And then you have to sort of walk forward in your own skin and make decisions that you can own. Could you talk a little bit about that, Natalie?
Yeah, I think it was very important to make something that people will watch and will not walk away from, because this stuff is, first of all, it's some of it can be hard to watch, and Christopher has said that he kind of put the easiest version of the animal treatment possible, to see that there was a conscious decision not to show like the kind of real mistreatment of animals, because we wanted it to be something that people could engage with and not want to walk away from, even though obviously that's a big part of the story. And then also that it wasn't going to be telling people what to do or making people feel bad about what they do, because a big part of the problem, I think, is the identity politics of like labeling yourself as a certain type of eater. Like, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, I'm an omnivore, whatever, that you don't have to take a label, and it actually might make a much bigger impact if everyone just has a little bit more consciousness, if everyone is conscious of not eating animal products once a day or once a week. That would make a huge impact, and everyone can say, oh yeah, I could do that. Whereas if you're like, you're never gonna eat cheese again, most people would be like, never, okay, I can't do this, I'm just not even gonna consider doing it. So I think it's giving a more practical, tangible way that you know, collectively, if we all just made a small change, it would make an enormous collective impact.
So I understand, Christopher, that we have some surprise guests from the film. Perhaps you could encourage them to come up and introduce them as they do.
Well, that would be wonderful. So that's Craig Watts. And then Jim Keane. And Larry Baldwin is with the River People Alliance. Who, by the way, has been working overtime because Florence hit right on the Neuse River that you saw in the film and decimated that area and caused a lot of environmental destruction. So he's been getting much sleep lately.
I just want to say how incredibly brave and hardworking all of these people are, and I'm so grateful to them for everything we do.
So all of us are aware of the timeline of what it takes to do a movie, and that time has passed since most of you were filmed for those scenes. So I think all of us would just love to hear a bit about what you're doing now, especially you, Craig.
Okay. I know you're excited to see me again. How are you? We have been looking for some time. I know a lot of you guys know a gentleman by the name of Gene Bauer, who I've become friends with over the last couple of years, and to find an alternative uses for these poultry houses. And we think that we're onto something, and we may be raising mushrooms in them. But what's paying the bills in the meantime is I'm working with an organization called the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, and basically my job has been to go out and get ahead of these communities where these factory farms or these complexes are setting up and talk to the farmers about the pitfalls of these contracts and educate the communities somewhat. So that's kind of what I've been up to, and just
Is it hard to get farmers to understand that despite what might seem like a lucrative contract, they're basically going to be almost serfs on their own land?
Yeah, that's been, there's this moth to the flame kind of attraction to it. I hear a lot of times that, you know, my kid's working in town now. I want to bring him back to the farm. I can do this and make a lot of money on a little bit of land, and he can bring his family back to the farm, which we know is not going to happen, or it'll happen, but then they'll be miserable. But I always said if I could talk one farmer out of getting into this stuff, that it would be mission accomplished. Yeah. And I've done that, or I've been part of doing that. So I can't explain it with the information that's out here today, especially the year of 2015, the first 6 months, the pressure was really put on the poultry industry. It kind of ended with the John Oliver segment, if you saw that, and in his own unique way, he kind of laid it out there. And I wish I could wave a magic wand and show people the future for 5 or 6 years down the road when you're in this. But unfortunately, by the time you get into it, it's too late. You're already $1 million in debt. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you how great you look.
I feel much better.
You've lost that haunted look.
Man.
You lost that haunted look.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, I'm so it's really horrifying to watch someone go through what you obviously went through, and so to know that you came out the other side is just wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you.
Jim, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about what you're doing now, because I understand that your life has pretty well transformed as well.
Well, I'm still in the tunnel. Craig got out, but I'm still in the tunnel, so I'm still trying to. I'm doing a lot of activist work, which is I like doing with lots of different animal protection organizations. Job-wise, I'm work for U.S. Nebraska Lincoln, which I have for a while. They don't like me. I don't like them. Sometimes I find a new place to land. hopefully I will in the next year or so. That's my goal anyway.
Maybe Davis would like you. No? California's a pretty good place to be. Mr. Waterman. Talk to us a bit about the effect of this flood that just happened and everything how much of what we saw is now underwater and part of a kind of toxic miasma.
Well, Eastern North Carolina basically is, we're in I'll use the term, we're in a crap storm. We have been for 25 years, but with the advent of these hurricanes coming on, and most recently you may have heard of this lady called Florence, who paid us a visit. She hit Eastern North Carolina on the 13th, on a Thursday, and we were back in the air on that following Saturday, and for 8 days, flying over Eastern North Carolina, and visually documenting how many of these, and I'm sorry, I don't call them farms, they're facilities. How many, whether it was poultry or whether it was hogs, were underwater and flooded. And the lagoons that you saw, those pink things that they call lagoons, we call cesspools, were not just surrounded by water, but were either overwashed or in some cases actually breached. Millions of gallons of this hog waste getting into the floodwaters that now is going downstream to communities who live downstream. The response from our state government has been, I'll just say, less than desirable. One of the replies is, well, let's just move them out of the floodplain. That's not going to do it.
You mean move the facilities?
Move the facilities out of the
floodplain.
That's a Band-Aid. You know, the system that you saw in the film. It's called the lagoon spray field system. It's broken. The way we raise these animals is broken. And unfortunately, North Carolina is kind of in the bullseye, and our state legislature seems to have this idea where if we just hold still long enough, we'll forget that Florence was here. But there's another one coming. You know, we've had 3 storms that have been indicated as being 500-year storms in 4 years.
How much of these facilities are not American owned, are foreign owned?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And talking specifically about the hog facilities. 70% of the hogs raised in North Carolina, east of Interstate 95, if you look at the map of North Carolina, it's in the lower elevation parts of North Carolina, are owned by Smithfield Foods. And I'm sure you probably all have seen Smithfield Foods in the supermarket. You may not know that Smithfield Foods is no longer a U.S. owned corporation. They're now owned by what they refer to as a multinational Chinese-based organization called the WH Group, controlled by a man by the name of Wan Long. So here we have a situation that has now even been exacerbated even further, because Mr. Wan Long doesn't give a damn about us. He doesn't give a damn about the people in Eastern North Carolina who have to live. We have people in North Carolina who, they stand on their front porch and within a mile, they have 5 of these stinking CAFOs. So we're now in a situation where we have an outside owned corporation controlling what happens to our people in Eastern North Carolina, our environment, and the communities that have to live with this. There's no way out of this. And you heard in the film talking about, you know, different ways that things are going to happen. Mother Nature is already telling us, I'm done with the way you're doing things, and I'm going to have my just day.
I think it's a good time to ask the audience. If you'd like to ask questions of the three gentlemen who just came up, you're welcome to do so. Who has the microphone out there? Is there an audience mic? No. Okay. Okay, right there. Yes. Could you stand up?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Hi, my name is Rondi, and thank you for everything that you're doing. So, it's clear for us to see what's going on. And so what do you think, like just watching this and knowing, I'm sitting here thinking, how can the world, the corporations, see and know this and be okay with it? Is it fear? Is it disconnect? What do you think? Like we saw that 5% was bought by, I believe, Tyson. What's causing this to just completely just be a wave of like some go viral per se and not take so long? I don't understand. Like for me, I'm like, I get it. This is ridiculous. It's a no-brainer. Are there some people that have no emotions? Are there, or, you know, what? I don't understand. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't have went undercover. I would have been an emotional mess. I couldn't do it. So what I'm trying to understand is what makes me different than the guy or the woman or whoever's up there that is trying to sue people for taking pictures and knows what's going on. I don't understand. You know, can you help explain that, please?
Well, wow. I think we were just talking with outside about. I think the momentum, at least public opinion, is definitely where you are at.
Okay.
Who is going to change it? If you look to that person to the right of you and to the left of you, and then take a look in the mirror, that's who eventually that's good. These companies will respond to the consumers. I've already seen it even since I've left Purdue. You know, they've come out with this animal welfare policy now. Did they grab low-hanging fruit? Absolutely, but it's a step in the right direction. And you know, sometimes the big changes start with like little incremental steps. And for a lot of us, I'm like you, I'm not real patient either. They could fall off the planet as far as I'm concerned if we had something to replace it. But that there's so many moving parts. You have policy, you know, you have agriculture policy that's just throwing good money after bad. It's not investing in a better mousetrap. And then you have political influence that these companies have. They've consolidated. They've got so big, it's ridiculous. North Carolina, it's a joke to try to hardly fight these companies because you're branded as anti-agriculture or anti-farmer or anti-family. You know, I'm a farmer. I'm not anti-agriculture. And you know, it's bullshit to me the way these things are done. So there is no easy answer. But as far as the ag gag, I mean, that's admitting you're doing something wrong right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think it's fear survival on one or the other? Like, if all this money stops coming in, how are we going to survive? So it's more of a thing against animals versus humans. Do you think that's stopping that? Because we could clearly, like you guys have shown, we could go plant-based. We could clearly change, and there's so many humans out there that the money would still be there, and they could still have all of their luxuries or whatever reason they feel we need to slaughter all these animals. Because it's got to be something, whether it's greed, fear, you know, of survival.
Oh, these companies. They don't give a rat's behind about the farmer, or the environment, or the communities. It's all about the bottom line. That's what's driving it. I mean, the agribusiness is, especially the meat industry, is tremendously profitable, while the average farmer's income has gone down drastically over the last 5 years.
Thank you.
There is some fear, you know, to some degree. Some of the things that we've done in North Carolina and in Iowa. I talk about North Carolina being a crap hole. Iowa is just being drowned. But it's greed. Okay, and now that greed has been taken to a different level because it's not even a U.S.-based organization anymore. And to some degree, it's like they don't want to admit that they've been wrong for the past 25 years. Because if they admit that they're wrong, then you have a responsibility to do something. What Craig just talked about, looking to your left and your right, that's where this is going to happen. That's where these changes are going to happen. If you ever want to really get an experience of what it's like in Eastern North Carolina, and we've actually challenged our state legislators, come to Eastern North Carolina. Give me a day. Just give me one day. Let me take you in an airplane. Let me take you on the ground. Let me introduce you to Elsie Herring or Devon Hall or Violet Branch or Renee Miller or any long list of people who get up every day and don't even know whether they can step out of their front door and have to deal with this odor. There is a real disconnect. I don't even say it's a disconnect. They don't care because they're still making the money. But it's going to take us. And I'm going to just real quickly. When Christopher first came to, well, he's been to North Carolina probably 5 times in the course of his making this film. And, you know, I have to admit at first, like, yeah, okay, some guy out here, he wants to make a film, sure, we'll show him around. The impact. If you can walk away from this film and not something stirring in your chest, you need to have a checkup.
Thank you so much, all of you. I believe that we're coming to the end. I want to thank Christopher and Natalie for having produced such a powerful, important film. And for you 3 gentlemen for allowing your lives to be part of the story.
Gentlemen might be stretching it a little bit.
Thank you so much.